Health and wellness are more than a destination. They are a process and a journey of personal choice. Come hear from people out in the field, doing the work, bringing health and wellness to many.
I'd like to welcome everyone today. We have a wonderful person here that is going to help us understand a lot about how food is grown and what's happening right now on the planet to help us to become innovative and have new strategies that we never could have thought of before. Jim Gale is with us, and he's the CEO of his company, but he calls himself a chief storyteller, and his company is called Food, Forest, and Abundance. I love that. He also has had many entrepreneurs, many businesses before, but this is, I guess, one of your more passionate ones, huh, Jim?
This is what my whole life has led to right here and now. And I'll frame this conversation with a quote by Victor Hugo. There's one thing stronger than all of the armies of the world, and that is an idea whose time has come. The solution to the destruction, the poisoning, the dis-ease and disease that plagues our world is very simple. It is the idea whose time has come, and that's when we simply use our resources and our properties wisely, growing food instead of lawns. That one thing, growing food instead of lawns, will reverse mass extinction and deforestation and heart disease. It will end world hunger, and it will literally wipe out all of the forms of tyranny without war, without fighting, without struggling. In fact, exactly the opposite of those horrible things. Just by loving life and using life's tools, God's tools, nature's tools, source's tools, whatever you call it, in a wise way that benefits us on every level.
What do you want to do with this amazing property?
I'll show you.
Okay.
Let's go.
Awesome.
My name is Jim Gale, and for the past 14 years, I've been on a mission to show people how easy it is to grow food instead of lawns.
Well, it's a little bit whiny.
Wine.
Yeah. Seeds of life right here.
Magic beans.
Magic beans that turn into life. I mean, how much more magical can you get? Look at that. This is like treasure hunting. Holy snaps. Oh, the flavor comes on. My whole mouth is alive.
I closed my eyes so many times and I was like imagining the grapes here, and now I don't have to close my eyes because there are grapes here. We're in a time in a culture in which people feel so disconnected.
Yeah.
And they want to feel like you have place in the world.
Gosh, that's powerful.
And now this bat box has a place.
Yes, it does.
In the last 2 years, more people have chosen to grow food at home than any time in history.
You know, people say that the Garden of Eden is a utopic fantasy when it's the next logical step.
So if you want more abundance, more flavor, more freedom, more energy, join me in the land of plenty.
This is a wild hibiscus. You can actually eat.
Nice. You've been eating all the food. You got to share.
Share, buddy. And check out that leaf. Isn't that amazing?
I mean, I was floating 20 feet off the ground my whole life. I feel like I have something to actually contribute that is not just ego or...
Right. So would you go back?
I can't go back.
Tell me a little more how you came to be.
It's interesting, Kathleen. I've never really thought about destiny. It just never really, I'm 52 years old. I've had what I consider an amazing, magical life, but I never put my mind to this idea that there's some bigger purpose than just me, living my life. Until one of our cooperative partners, his name is Ethan, he said, Jim, I looked up your name. Your name, Jim or James, means to overthrow, defeat, or supplant. And I really love that word, supplant. Your last name means Gale, strong wind. And you are called upon to do this and this and this and help change society. And I look at that, and that's exactly what everything in my life has led up to, this moment right here, where we are now expanding this idea whose time has come globally very fast. So
That's
I was
really nice. That's really beautiful. But you told me when we met that you had you always had an interest, like nature and food. That's not what you originally did, right? So how did you go from doing this business that was typical, maybe not your passion, but you did it and you did it well, to finding this and realizing it was always in you?
So it was always, since I was a little kid, I grew up in Minnesota and they called me Nature Boy, right? My only magazine subscription ever was Ranger Rick. My favorite TV show was The Crocodile Hunter, which is incredibly relevant considering the Crocodile Hunter producer called me up after seeing one of my videos and said, we want to make you the Steve Irwin of permaculture, to which I got tears in my eyes because when Steve Irwin died, I cried. Like, I loved that guy. So it was just a magical situation. I then traveled to about 47 countries, lived in Africa with the Maasai and all over different places because I love culture. I love the different cultures. They're so magical, and every culture has its own wisdom, right? So this trying to put everything into one box and have everybody be the same is insane. Diversity is strength. So I learned a lot through my travels. Then goal setting too, creating a vision of the future that was inspiring and compelling to me was when I learned about that the first time I was 19. And my college wrestling coach said to the whole class, the whole wrestling team, everybody's got to write their goals this weekend. And I was like, oh God, what a pain in the right? And anyway, that Friday night, the person who left the wrestling room on Friday night and the person who came back on Monday morning were different people. Because for the first time in my life, I had on paper created a compelling future for myself, a future that inspirited me. It inspired me. And from then on, I wrestled with enthusiasm, right? Enthusiasm. I just became so engaged. People, in fact, I got elected captain on the team in the NCAAs in college as a freshman, which is very rare. Because I was just feeling good about it. I was inspired. It wasn't effortful. All right. And that's one of the things that society is so struggling right now and striving and efforting. We have to let go of all that struggle and just have faith and courage, and then use that inspired way of being, that raised vibration, which, by the way, creates more energy and health. So it's a good thing on every level. Use that towards the pursuit of happiness. Right. And then and we'll show you how to do it. It's a lot of fun.
It's so nice. Well, I'm really taken with that because I also love nature. Yeah. And I love being in nature. And I did when I was a child. It's like fantasy for me. I'm like in this moment. But I will say that I think you hit something. I mean, we train health and wellness coaches, and we always say you have to do what you love. And if you do what you love, it will come easy. And when you do something you don't love, you're going to be up against like walking uphill, really. So that's beautiful how you describe that. Now, I want to get into the issue of the problem. There are some issues on the earth that are currently, I wouldn't say I never look at them as I'm defeated by them, but I look at them as they are presenting themselves to overcome, right? One is sustainability. We need to live in a sustainable world. We all knew that the world we were in our generation was not really sustainable. So we need to adapt to some way. And we also knew that our world, because I'm a nurse, I know, is not exactly geared towards health and wellness and balance. So I'm just curious how you feel about certain things. Like, we teach about the problems like soil depletion, green harvesting, altered seeds that have been developed, too long shipping distances. So these are immediate issues that are affecting our food supply and what we become, because we become what we eat, right? We are. Yeah. So can you share a little bit about those issues?
I can. And I like boiling things down to the lowest common denominator. What is the overarching problem that plagues our world? It is literally govern, which means to manage or control, and mente, and all of the arms of governmente that create the wars, that mandate the poisons, that fund all of these different systems. In every industry, there's basically two corporations which control the governmente and control the industries in our world. And so at the end of the day, it's ignorance and it's fear that are the control tools of that create the enslavement of humanity. Right. And to raise up above them, which is our nature. We are abundant beings. We have been given all of the tools by whatever magic that supports this whole existence. We have been given everything to thrive radically.
So let's get down to the issues, because many people don't even know what I'm talking about. So soil depletion. Yeah. What has happened with our soil? I tell a little bit like this. That's you called it Garden of Eden. I tell it like we didn't really let's say we got greedy. We didn't really respect the soil. And maybe in the Indian tradition, they would harvest once in a while and they would do it really well and replenish. We didn't do that. And we started using kind of a lot of pesticides that weren't all that healthy. I know we teach about the conventional, what we call ancient seeds that we can buy, that you don't have to buy these altered seeds. There is a big difference, right? Like I know if I took the altered seeds and I took ancient grain seeds and I were to put them, I saw this done. I put them in a cornfield and put something over, the birds would go to the ancient seeds. They wouldn't even be interested in the GMO.
Amazing.
There's a reason, right?
Yes.
So can you share a little bit about those issues?
Yes. At the core level, everything has a vibrational essence, some type of energy, frequency, and energy. And nature recognizes this. And people, the more we meditate and allow our mind to silence and start feeling it, we can feel it too. This is the foundation of our health and wellness. So what, again, to be aware of what the overlying problem is, and that's the poisons, and that's the genetically modified situations in a way that's not sustainable or not natural, right? Every fruit tree that you've seen in the last 10 years has been modified to a degree, but it's been done naturally, where you take two different plants and you put them together and they then create offspring, and the offspring become better in a lot of ways until they're not. And here's when they're not: when the seeds are no longer viable. That's when they're not. Or when they're less nutrient dense, that's when they're not, right? When it starts becoming less abundant, then it starts going the wrong way. But the magic about nature is built on abundance. So over time, this is why these poisons haven't totally destroyed our world already, even though they're coming at us from all directions. Our water, our air, our minds, and the fear, all that stuff. Is nature so strong, so amazing that it has to take even more poisons. But now the good news is that the poisons are being called out and people are becoming aware that this is not the way.
Yeah, so that is so true. Like, I agree with that completely. And I know, so this altered seeds is one, and the green harvesting. People, like, we got into this really big global world where everything was shipped from hundreds of miles. Like your orange was not from here, it was from Florida. Well, here we're in Holland, but so everything was shipped. And can you share with the audience, like, what is the problem with that? There is a big problem.
Well, the resources, the amount of resources that it takes to ship in the United States, the average farm to table is 1,500 miles, right? When it used to be 100 years ago, it used to be probably average of a mile, right? So now the resources, now it went from two hands, basically the farmer to the customer, or maybe the farmer to the local middleman and then the customer. So 2 or 3 hands, maybe 2 vehicles. Now it goes in 5 or 6 or 7 vehicles, and it's handled by so many people. Every one of those handlings is an expense, not only to our society on every level with regards to all the resources used, but also when these fruits are picked 2 weeks or even a couple months before they're ready, then they're less delicious and less nutrient dense.
Because the sun has not ripened them.
Yes.
So they sit in these big warehouses, right? And they are sprayed. They are given color. They don't have a natural color. So a natural process of ripening is on the sun, and it becomes, it makes that color, and it makes those sugars in it, and it makes it taste good and give us nutrition. But when that doesn't happen, and it just goes green, like a banana's green or everything green, into this warehouse, and sometimes for a couple months. I mean, it doesn't taste like anything. And
it doesn't. It doesn't even taste like food. Like, you've had tomatoes, one, you get at the grocery store, one you pick off a vine. It's a completely different experience.
Yeah. And then you have the soil depletion, which you have commented. If you don't respect the land and you keep using it and you don't do it the right way, then you're not going to get food.
Right. We are mining, destroying, poisoning our soil at a rate of 10 to 40 times the rate of replenishment. The UN, farmers, permaculturists have all said the same thing, that we've got basically a couple generations left in our major grow lands of soil, and then we're done. If that were the only reason to take my suggestions, with mindfulness, then that'd be a good enough reason.
Exactly. And the other thing is, I do know this because of my work, but if you keep putting those pesticides, what I've heard from farmers is that the bacteria becomes limited, right? Yeah. So then we don't get a variety of bacteria. And you were the one who started to say we need we're different, we're all biodiverse, and we all need a lot of different kind of bacteria.
Yeah, we're made of bacteria and virus. If you took all those out of our body, we wouldn't have anything left. There'd be nothing here, right? Except for a vibration. And so absolutely, it's the diversity that creates the strength. So a food forest, the way we design them is to be very diverse. My partner, Dr. Ian Scott, his backyard, he's got over 70 different types of food growing in his backyard. Wow. And over 100 and some different plants, perennial plants, on 1/10 of an acre. It's just amazing. Loaded with food. Yeah.
Can you tell me a little bit about the issue with pesticides? Let's look at that. Because I know pesticides have been used, very dangerous ones actually, and organic pesticides, right? You have both. So what are some of the issues? Because we already know that the really bad ones are not good for us. They cause cancer. They have all kinds of problems. And they don't, eventually the microbiome is hurt in us, our whole flora, our whole gut. Yes. So, and our gut is our health, and our gut is our immune system. And look at all the issues we're having. So my question is about organic food. Tell me a little bit about that, about what's going on with organic food. Right.
Well, first of all, this whole idea that the food that's natural and not using poisons has to go through a process of certification, which takes tens of thousands of dollars and a lot of time. And then you have to keep updating this. It's a complete scam by the same entities that I'm talking about. What's the poisons, the glyphosates and all these poisons are from the same groups of people. And it is depleting our soil in such a way where it's literally, this is what we have to end. There's a lot of things we have to end. But again, we don't have to do so by fighting anybody. No. We simply do so by turning our own properties into productive systems that will radically reduce our family's chance of getting cancer or heart disease or diabetes. Yeah, right? There's another great reason.
Yeah, all the things. Okay, so organic food is not that much better. It's a little better, but not that much better.
No, it's incredibly better. It's better? I never eat poisonous food. Never. So
you try to eat organic food?
No, I don't try. I always eat foods that are not grown with poisons.
Okay, good. Yeah. So you can, when you go to the supermarket, you should look for that, and you should try to get organic food as much.
Absolutely. In fact, people think that, like they think, oh, McDonald's is so convenient. Like, okay, well, what is convenience? What do you mean? Did you just save 30 minutes by getting a window drop? Or did you actually cost yourself an hour that day of energy, of good energy? And that's a fact. I mean, when you eat that kind of crap regularly, you sleep more, your body has to process and detoxify more, and you live a shorter life. So is it really convenient to have poisons? Absolutely not.
No, but people have to become aware. So these altered foods that we're eating, we've been eating for some generations now. Actually, I saw Senate information from 1932 that we already had altered foods. So that meant that in 1932, the orange that you were eating was not necessarily giving you very many vitamins or minerals. And today it's even worse, obviously. So it's affecting our health and wellness. And so as people are growing in consciousness, they're starting to become aware that the food, the very food, has been altered and is affecting our health and wellness. And this is like a huge step. And you share this I love this about your work. You share this as self-reliance. You talk about this step of consciousness of realizing that you have to look at yourself and what you can do. And food and our bodies, I mean, we do have a spiritual part and we do have an emotional part, which are very important, but the food is still like, we have a body. Yeah. We still have to nourish it, right?
Absolutely.
Tell me about it.
And I like to change the have tos to get tos. And this is something I just learned in the last like 6 months or so, is we get to because it's pure joy bringing, like the act of gardening. When you can combine gardening with relaxing your mind, with meditation and exercise, now you're creating incredible abundance and you're having a good time while you're doing it, which of course is a part of the abundance process.
Yeah, I do believe that it's sort of like when you make your own meals.
Yeah.
You give it your own energy and it tastes better. I don't know why, but
it does.
Special. Yeah. So permaculture is your background too. You studied it and learning a little bit about what should go, what plants should go with what, that they work better. And so as you're doing this and you're making these gardens, you talk about creating food forests and you talk about food designs. And so can you share a little bit about the idea of a food forest, food garden, and food design, like how you thought about it and how you help people and what that
all. So there's a science out there. It's an agricultural design science founded by Bill Mollison and David Holmgren. And now there's millions of people around the world who have taken the permaculture design course. And it basically is a system that models nature, that looks at, observes, and interacts with natural systems and says, okay, what is the goal? What is the yield of this system? And how can we benefit the system and increase the yield at the same time? Right. So then all these people around the world are practicing with different things. And all of those new ways are basically put into the permaculture network. And then the permaculture network says, oh my God, look what this person's doing over in South Africa. Look what this person's doing in Thailand. We just got an incredible design for our property here in Central Florida, a pathway, a 400-foot permaculture pathway that goes between the road and the lake that has about 100 different species. And every segment of the pathway which curves is a new element. Right. In fact, I'll go through the first one is the cold hardy hallway. Right. And that's because that comes from the north where we want to make sure the wind is lifted over the other trees with cold hardy plants. Right. So those plants on that edge are cold hardy, which makes them a proper function in that part of the system. And then we've got the next row you turn down is a banana paradise or banana boulevard, right? And it's going to have about a dozen different species of banana along this walk. And then aromatic alley, which is all sorts of medicinal herbs and different fragrant producing flowers, right? And flowers also serve the function of attracting the birds and the bees, the hummingbirds and the butterflies, all of the pollinators, right? So that's just a few. I could go through more if you want. It's pretty cool.
That's so nice. So for the person, like, so you have a food forest, meaning you put certain things together that you know do better together. And
exactly.
then they grow a lot better. They're happier. And they come up, and they come up every year or right? So
there's a difference between annuals and perennials. Annuals are plants that you plant once and then you harvest, maybe it's tomatoes, you harvest 100 tomatoes or whatever from that plant. And then you take some of the seeds from those tomatoes and you plant a new plant. That's an annual, right? They usually last one season. Then you've got perennials, which are things like fruit trees and berry bushes. In fact, there's an olive tree on the Greek Isle of Crete that has been producing olives for over 2,000 years, one tree.
So that's very cool. So when people would take your permaculture course, how long is it?
The permaculture course is 72 hours. Yeah. And that's done. We've partnered with, and that's what we do at Food Forest Abundance is we find and shine a light on the people who are doing it around the world. It's called our Food Forest Cooperative. And it's basically an entity that helps connect all the dots and help bring the solutions to more people.
So what kind of vegetables would go together, for instance?
Well, it depends on many factors, and that's what the design process is all about, right? And the design process is number one. So we go into a customer's yard and talk with the customers. First thing we find out is what zone are you in? Because every agricultural zone has its own specific plants that work best in that zone. And I want to shine some lights on some stuff. Like one of my friends in northern Minnesota, his name is Chad Johnson. He's got a food forest on the tip of Lake Superior, where it's really cold. And in his food forest, he's got over 300 different species of edible and medicinal plants in such a way that it's expanding exponentially into the forest around him.
Wow.
Right? It's paradise. He's got birds coming from other parts of the world that aren't even supposed to be in the United States. So he's got more biodiversity has been attracted to his property than all the properties around because of the design and the function of the design.
Wow. So you look at the person's garden, and even if they have a small apartment, you can help them?
Yeah, I mean, and a lot of the small apartment, you can do indoor grows. We help them. We don't charge it. We just tell you how to do it. It's so simple. Microgreens, right? You can go on YouTube and you can see microgreens, how to grow microgreens on your kitchen counter. They're fantastic. They're 4 to 40 times more nutrient dense than their adult counterparts.
Like an example of a couple of them would be
broccoli and kale and sunflowers and wasabi and amaranth and peas. I like combining.
Better inside than outside, or could you do that?
Yes, because they're a little more fragile, and you can actually harvest these plants in 14 days.
Wow.
Yeah. Peas, you can harvest in like 8-9 days. They're like 7-8 inches tall within 8-9 days. And you've got a tray where you start with the seed. And because it's such a baby plant, the nutrient density, it's all packed into that tiny shell, that tiny plant body. So microgreens are my favorite for indoors. But then if you want to get expansive, you could do all sweet potatoes. Some people have got lemon trees growing inside.
Wow. And outside, what kind of things could they grow outside?
Everything. So this is what the magic of the internet, it has its faults, but it also has its incredible benefits. And what the growers around the world have done is they've started combining their knowledge and putting together these plant databases. And it is absolutely, it's like 10x'd in the last 20 years. The amount of known plants has just exploded.
Wow. So you could really you could start simple, and then you could build up to a more elaborate. That's so wonderful, Jim. Wow. I love it. So you get I'm just going to repeat for everyone who's listening. You contact your company, you get a design, you give them pictures and whatever you want. And then they help you also to figure out what you would like to start with. And you make a whole program. That's very exciting.
Yeah, and I'll just fill in a couple more layers there. The first thing is the ag zone. The second most important thing is, what does the customer want, right? What's the customer's vision and goal for their own property? How much time do they want to spend? Some customers say, I don't want to spend any time in my food forest. And what happens is they always do, because it becomes a paradise.
Yeah.
But they say, I just want to have food growing. Okay, great. We'll focus heavily on the hardy perennials that don't take any maintenance in any zone, just like your forest down the street. Who maintains that forest? Nobody.
No,
right? That's how you can create it. Or you can create with more annual beds where at 15 minutes every other day is logical. And most people spend more than that because it's just, like I said, it's beautiful.
Well, and it's really nice that you use more ancient grains, more seeds that are really good for us, that are diverse. That's really important. Okay, I have another question. That's so wonderful. This new world that we are going to go in, you mentioned it at the beginning, that it is the world where we don't have really needs anymore. We know we're abundant, and we can manifest, and we can create the world we want, because we kind of get to the idea that we are the creator, right? Yeah. I would love you to explain your idea of a little more on abundance, the word abundance.
All right. And I'll start with the sustainable versus unsustainable. So a sustainable system is a system that produces as much or more energy than it takes to create, right? So it's net energy positive. And an unsustainable system is net energy negative, right? Like the way we're poisoning our soil around the world is a net negative. It's unsustainable, and all unsustainable systems fail, right? Then you take to the next level of sustainable when you start putting these diverse systems together in a way that's regenerative. Then it becomes radically exponentially abundant. And that's the economy that's the foundation of the next 2,000 years, I think, is that type of logic as far as our economy, instead of planned obsolescence, things that are supposed to deteriorate or fall apart over time so that the economy can thrive. We want to separate from that by just loving ourselves and doing exactly what I'm sharing with you. And that's following the design of Mother Nature herself.
And abundance is really like, it's just such a beautiful, when you change your belief systems that all is possible, you become quite liberated, right? You become.
Oh, it's so true. It was Napoleon Hill, after studying the most successful people in the world on many different levels. He did this book called Think and Grow Rich. Yeah. And in that book, he said, whatever the mind of man or woman can conceive and believe, it can achieve. Now, those sound like fancy words. Are they just fancy words? Absolutely not. They are the core truth that this wise man had learned after his studies. Whatever we can conceive and believe, we can achieve. So then then what can we conceive and believe? This has been my joyful obsession for 14 years. And the more I ask the question, the more this picture of abundance comes into my head with clarity. And then I reverse engineer that picture in a business sense. I had a former business that did about 1.3 billion in revenue in 3.5 years, starting from scratch with no industry knowledge, right? This, I have a lot more industry knowledge, and we have a lot more need as a society, which is why it's growing so fast.
But that's so exciting. And I think it's very powerful to not have all these fears that hold so many people back. If we had more of an abundant mindset, we would, as humanity, just live to our potential better. And you have been, obviously, Jim, a very big example of that. I'm curious a little bit, like, I want to talk a little bit now about, you talked about electromagnetic fields. Everything has a frequency. We have a frequency. Plants have a frequency, all of it. We are much more affected by energy than we ever realized. And when we're eating food, we're eating that energy to replenish our energy fields also. I was going to ask you, I think this might sound weird, but like I had this tree in my front yard, and I suddenly was getting information one day. I know it sounds crazy, but the tree, I never worried about the tree, and I never thought about the tree except for that it was beautiful. But this one day I was sort of like, this tree's in trouble. And somehow that was communicated. I don't know how, through these electromagnetic fields. And I called my gardener, and he said, oh, you have to cut it down. It's got really damaged. And it upset me so much because it was still beautiful. So I did some research. I hired a tree surgeon, and he saved the tree. It didn't die. He gave it some love and nourishment and a lot of help, and it recovered. And he said it can live hundreds more years. I mean, he was really 100 or more years. Yeah. So that was really exciting to see that rejuvenation possible. So have you, as a person who's in nature, like, have you had these kind of experiences?
Oh, gosh. I'm so glad you brought this up, Kathleen, because what you just described as your experience, and that is seen by the world as crazy.
Yeah.
And now we've got a crazy world telling us what's crazy when what we're talking about is good stuff, right? So that's one of the foundational things of awareness. And I like to throw out the word choice. You know, when people use the word choice, the word itself implies that there is an awareness of choice. But 99% of the time, there's not an awareness. People always do the best they can with what they understand, right? And what we need to what we get to overstand is this idea that we are being spoken to and guided all the time. Mm-hmm. And there's a story I want to share with you that it brings tears to my eyes just thinking about this. Mm-hmm. It was a year ago. And I had went from zero back when I was 30, I was broke after traveling. Luckily, I had parents. I went and lived in their basement, and they gave me an old car to use for a few months until I got back on my feet. Then over the next 5-6 years, I went from zero to $20 million in net worth. Then for 14 years, once I started finding out about the depth of the problem and the ignorance and the suffering and all these different things, I got so wrapped up into it that I was stressed. And I had my first 2 daughters at the same time, which then I started looking at the world through their eyes. I'm like, oh my God, how are we going to change it? How are we going to make this shift? Because I don't think my daughters will have grandkids if we don't. I mean, that's how, I see it after lots of study. So it was about a year ago, and I was walking down the road, meditating deeply. And I've been a huge fan now of meditation. Meditation is supposedly what made Jesus into an enlightened guy, what made Buddha into an enlightened guy, and millions more people, right? And what is enlightenment? It's simply my mind is free of the programming. That's all it is, in my opinion. I can't move shit. I can't ESP, but I can understand and overstand concepts at a much better level without the programming in front of the idea. So what you said is the foundation of the way of future. And that's to take a breath and relax into the moment and be completely present. And then an idea will come. Where does it come from? That's the great mystery, right? Yeah. It comes from somewhere pretty freaking cool.
Yeah.
And if it feels good, and when we can use our emotions, our feelings as a compass, then we can guide our lives. And Joseph Campbell said, follow your bliss, right? Truer words have not been spoken. When your bliss is regenerative and abundant and healthy for the world, then bliss is what's going to change the world in a good way.
Yeah, and bliss is a very high frequency. So if more people were really blissful, authentically happy, whatever that is for them, the world would be different, right? But I just think in that moment of the nature that each tree and every plant and they all have their electromagnetic fields. We have our electromagnetic fields. And through this field, somehow there is communication, which is so exciting. The new sciences are showing us this. And we teach that, but I love it. I think it's so cool. It's really bringing us to understand ourselves better and understand this world we live in. But so you've had that, obviously, as a little boy, you've had this relationship with nature that actually was very pure. And
very pure. I just loved it. I loved and wanted to play with nature in a way that was good for nature. Right. And then at times when I went away from that in my life, I remember thinking, this doesn't feel right. It doesn't feel good. I don't feel the way I used to feel. And then the more I ask the question, the more I resonate into the raised vibration. And that's why I'm designing my life according to the permaculture principles. And they're completely regenerative and abundant. And that means ultimate freedom, right? Of all kinds, of mind, of body, of the whole works.
Yeah. And, obviously freedom, like nature itself knows boundaries, right? So freedom with good boundaries, I would say.
Voluntarism or regenerative capitalism is the voluntary exchange of value. So we teach this in a way where me doing what's good for me is also good for you.
I think the idea is that we're going to a more cooperative society where the old names we called things weren't really true. So that now it's better to look at a new way of describing how we are in relationship with our environment. And that is, we want a society that's more cooperative. So that means cooperative with nature, cooperative with each other. And only when we're in our heart can that happen, right? So we need to go to the heart, and that's not so easy. I can tell you from someone who helps people heal, but that's another conversation.
Well, can I just jump in on that? Because there's some good stuff you just to unpack. Yes. You said it's not very easy, but it's a lot easier than sticking with the current, right?
No, I know. And I love that. But what I mean is what's hard, what I have observed is that people want to go to a new thing many times, but they're afraid to leave the old thing because it's safe and secure, and they don't know themselves in a context of the new. So you have to be quite courageous, actually, to, I believe some of us were here to show the courage. I have a sister. I'm very, very courageous, but you know what she is? She's very loving. Yeah. So I learned how to love from her, and she might have learned a little courage from me. But the two together, so if we can look at each other's good qualities, we can grow, to a different kind of world. But I think this is what is important for me and in the new time, because it is hard for people to change. Not always. Some people love change. We know that. But
and it's infinitely harder not to change. Ultimately. And then we get to have courage. Tesla said, if you want to find the secrets to the universe, think in terms of energy, frequency, and vibration. And I'd like to change one word there. Don't think in terms of that. Feel, experience in terms of energy, frequency, and vibration. And when we feel and experience, and then are guided by that vibration, which is representative of an emotion in our body, we get to have the courage by doing that will lead us forward.
Exactly. Instead of just walking in nature and you're in your left brain thinking, you miss everything. So when you go in nature and you can be in your heart and feel, and then you can pick up on the frequencies. Like that day I somehow heard that tree speak to me, which was very strange. But anyway, the tree's still good, so that's the good thing.
That's beautiful. So you didn't listen to the way it normally done. You said, no, I don't agree. I'm going to have another opinion. I love that.
Yeah, no, I did, because I love the tree and I didn't want to see this tree die. You know, it's such a beautiful tree. But anyway, the point is, you learn through these kind of experiences. I'm curious where you see yourself in growing with this in 10 years, like a vision you have.
Yeah. The vision, and it's happening. There's nothing can stop it now. It's already well on its way, is we are going to overthrow and supplant this ignorant form of society and ruled by rulers. We don't need a ruler. We don't need an authority authoring our own stories, right? We get to be the author by learning voluntarism and by being inspired and by being joyful. So this is what's happening. And this is the foundation of it, is the energy and the emotion behind it. Of course, time is of the essence. And so we're doing it at a radically exponential rate. For instance, there's a TV show that's just been finished by the Crocodile Hunter producer and an A-list movie star named Adrian from Entourage. And then we've got a school now, or a fund that wants to get us $50 million to put food forests in schools throughout North America and the world.
Beautiful.
Isn't that one thing? Because we stack functions, which is a permaculture principle. And by stacking a function, you're not only creating a food forest at a school, which will be a food producing system. It'll also be an education system. It'll be a nursery. It'll be a habitat producer. It'll be a community hub where the community can come in and that abundance will go. So it's like the anti-cancer, the antivirus, is we're seeding and nourishing these systems all over the world in a way where they just spread over and create abundance everywhere.
Yeah, and they have done research that children learn better when plants are near them.
Yes.
So that is
rejuvenating.
Yeah, I have seen this research. And so in so many of the schools, they have like little garden centers and everything already. So it would be very cool to get food that was grown there for the kids. That would be amazing. But they could see that, you know?
Yes. I love it.
Yeah. It's really important, this whole way of, you know, we are, like you said, everything's vibrating, everything's alive. We look at things superficially and we think they're just like a diagram or something, but it's not true. Right. Things are interlocking strings and strands of frequency and energy, actually. So It's very exciting. All right. So in 10 years, you see things like going into schools, like what we see on buildings, you know, all the buildings coming now with plants.
It's happening fast. Yes. It's going exponential. In 10
and
years.
On rooftops.
Every logical place, right? And we use that word logical to get rid of the woo, to get rid of all these. You know, it's logical on every single level, and it'll save our individuals, our families, and our society. It's like the only way. And
vertical forests, right? Like some can go up. So that you can, if they don't have a lot of space. That's what I've seen in places like Hong Kong and in New York, where they have no space, right?
Yeah, we're doing trellises over pathways that become hyper functional, right? They're beautiful, which is you just want to walk there. They're habitat, and they become shade producers. And of course, you're walking through the trellis and you're picking food.
Wow. And so if you told about a person who lives in like -degree weather building, and this is outside gardens. So you can pretty much build these all year round and have some food coming all year round.
Well, it's a thing like in a place like Minnesota, you get for 2 to 3 months of the year, you get an insane harvest. Like that's how those systems go. You get no harvest for 6 months of the year. You get a tiny harvest for 3 months of the year. And then you get a crazy harvest for 3 months. So then we learn, okay, we can dehydrate, we can, we can preserve in all sorts of different ways.
And even freeze, right?
Freeze dry, freeze, absolutely. Yeah.
Oh, wow. This is so exciting. So, Jim, I know that you and I have spoken that I'm going to take you up on this challenge. I have a garden in Amsterdam that is not the easiest, I will say to you, because we live in an overwatered area in the middle of Amsterdam. So we're always having issues with the soil. But I'm sure with your help, we're going to build something.
Yes.
I'm so excited. And then we're going to show the audience in a number of months. So
it'll be fun. Oh, it'll be so
fun.
much fun.
It'll be fun. And, you know, I think your idea of being in nature and making food yourself is so, it also does something to you. It also can help you heal. I don't know.
You said it earlier about the kids. The act of looking at a flower or a forest is great. Then you take the next level. You stand in one. Then you take your shoes off and you stand barefoot on the ground. It's called grounding. There is so much science to support what you just said.
So nice. I'm so looking forward to it. So we'll have you back. I will take pictures of how this garden grows. I'm very excited. So
me too.
Yeah. And believe me, I will say I'm not very good at it. This has not been my field. Obviously, I help people in other ways, but it's always good to do something that you don't think you're good at, so that you can show yourself that you can actually try. And I think if I can do it, the world can try it.
Absolutely.
Well, Jim, thank you so much. And well, we look forward to seeing you again.
Do you want to join Kathleen in her Food Forest Abundance Challenge? Take a look at the link in the description for more information. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.